morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who would have tuned in by now. And I'd like to welcome you today to actually the final session of our Regional Radio Communication Seminar for the Americas, the ITU RRS 2020 as we call it, jointly hosted by the ITU and hosted by the CTU on this Zoom webinar platform, the Caribbean. I'm Nigel Casimir, Telecommunications Specialist at the Caribbean Telecommunications Union based in Port of Spain, Trinidad. And as usual, before we get started, just let me remind you of the couple tips so that you can participate successfully. Well, it's a little late now, but hopefully you would have identified yourself by first name and last name and organization and country, so that when we can easily identify you as a participant, and also for any questions and any interventions that might be possible. During the presentations you will hear, and we just have one session this morning, we ask that you post your questions into the Q&A box in order for them to be seen and efficiently addressed. The Q&A box is accessible by clicking the Q&A button located at the bottom of your Zoom window. And we ask you to use the Q&A because we have hundreds of persons registered and there would be limited opportunities for verbal interventions. There's also the chat button that you can use for sharing your general comments and information with panelists and or attendees. The default setting for the chat is to all panelists. So if you want to send to all panelists and participants, you need to properly select that option when entering your comments into the chat box. The presentation slides and session recordings and other resource materials that are downloadable are all being and will be posted on the event webpage on the ITU website. This is the last day of our seminar, which ran for the past 2 weeks, and I hope that the wind-up would be as stimulating as the rest of the days have been. Today, we have one session, which is our roundtable on WRC 19 outcomes and WRC 23 agenda challenges, and focusing, of course, on our region, Region 2, and we have also a little extra focus on the Caribbean region issues in the panel. And this panel will be moderated by Mr. Joaquin Restrepo, from the ITU Radio Communications Bureau. And I'll ask Joaquin now to take the floor and introduce his panel. Mr. Joaquin Restrepo, please.
Thank you, Nigel. Do you hear me?
Yes, quite well.
Welcome back to everybody. It's our pleasure to join in again for this last session. Thank you, giving our gratitude for all the participants for their devotion, your time during these 2 weeks. This session is related to the WRC 19 outcomes and WRC 23 agenda. As you remember, last week, my colleague both for terrestrial and space services presented in detail the outcomes of the conference and the agenda of the next conference from the regulatory perspective, showing the impact on the radio regulations and on the procedure for coordination and notifications. And during the keynote, when we opened in this panel on Tuesday, our director highlight the same outcomes and agenda now from the perspective of the impact on the ecosystem of radio communication industry, and in particular on the benefit and the impact on the citizens and the countries. Then I'm going to save this time. I'm not going to present that again. Remember that on the material we had provided and you could download, you find out all the agenda WRC 23 and the draft agenda of 27. And then one of the key points of these agendas conference is trying to build up the consensus, but this consensus is a long-term process and is in a bottom-up approach. Then it's important trying to find the consensus at sub-regional level, going up to regional level, and having that at the level of the conference. That's why we like to now give the floor to the relevant organization in the region 2. First, the CITEL, encompassing all the Americas, then the sub-regional positions and views from the Caribbean, small island states from CTU, and also complemented by Contelca, and closed by the industry perspective from satellite and mobile industry. Saying that, all the speakers you know pretty well because they have already participated before. We have Miguel Munoz, a consultant from CITEL, Kir Sokran, Executive Officer of Technology and Engineering from the Telecommunications Administration of Trinidad and Tobago, or talking on behalf of CTU, Alan Ruiz, Executive Secretary of Contelca, Luciana Camargo, Director Future Spectrum on GSMA, and Hassan Moakid, Intelsat, talking on behalf of ESO as a global spectrum and policy regulator. Saying that, let's proceed. Then I first invite CITEL to share with us the vision of CITEL about the outcome of the conference, and particularly the roadmap to prepare the next conference. Miguel, welcome, and floor is yours.
Thank you, Joaquin, and thanks everyone. I must say that I am glad to be here and see many familiar faces and many panelists that I know, and I see that you are doing well in these particular times, and I am happy for that. Thank you for the invitation, the ITU and CTU, and on behalf of the Executive Secretary of CITEL that has some previously scheduled here. He will not be participating, but I will do it very gladly. So let me share my presentation with you, and please feel free to make your questions as Joaquin mentioned. First, for some of you that are not very familiarized with what is CITEL, CITEL is the body that is in charge of the telecommunications in the OAS, in the Organization of American States. So we try to build common positions on a regional spectrum organization among the CITEL countries, and other things that because of the time being I will not engage too much. CITEL is composed by our 34 state members and more than 100 associate members from the private sector, academy, and some other organizations related to the telecommunications sector. This is the CITEL structure. The main body is the CITEL Assembly that defines the goals and strategic lines. The CITEL that between every CITEL Assembly. CITEL Assembly is more or less like the WRC. It's a big conference that defines roles and authorities. So the CITEL is like the council of the ITU. So it's in charge of planning, administration, management, and things like that. The actual chair of the CITEL is Argentina. Then there are two main bodies when the discussions take place. One is related to the policy, regulation, development of telecommunications, that is called the PCC1. And the other one is the PCC2, that is related with radio communications, when you can discuss everything related with the use of the spectrum and the satellite orbits, science service, everything that is related with radio communications. And the CITEL Secretariat is the technical or is the staff that helps that everything works smoothly. So I will not be talking too much on the PCC1 because we will be focusing on the radio communications aspect of CITEL. So here you can see that we have some working groups. Sorry for this, but I was looking for the pen. And as you can see, we have 3 working groups that the name defines what is going to discuss on such a working group. One is for terrestrial services, the other one for scientific services and satellite systems, and other one for broadcasting. So it is pretty much clear what are discussing there. The 4th one is on spectrum management, and it is apart from all of them because the point is that all of those services need to convene and to discuss in one single or the same level of discussions, not to prioritize if they are going to discuss some use of the spectrum. Perhaps if we send the document to the terrestrial services, it could be a tendency to discuss the specific time or to be more focused on the terrestrial service approach. So we would like to have a common ground for all of them. That's why this working group is there. And also because usually the participants in CITEL, they are only focusing on one specific item, like the terrestrial service, and if the document is discussing on the satellite system, perhaps they could lose that discussion. So we try to put everything together in this working group. The other one is related with the strategic initiatives of the OES that are related with the telecommunications, like the ICT 2030 Alliance and some other things. And the one that will be more discussed today is the working group relative to CITEL's preparation of World Radio Communications Conference, or the WRC working group that we call it to make it shorter. You can see that there are 2 flags there because for this study cycle, Mexico is the chair of that group. And when this study cycle finishes at the end of the WRC 23 conference, then the vice chair, that is Colombia, will assume the chairmanship of the working group. So the WRC working group structure is brand new. We had our meeting in May 11th, and we were able to define the new structure for CITEL for this study cycle. And we have divided in 5 sub-working groups. One is related to the mobile, fixed, and broadcast agenda items. The coordinator, or the main coordinator, will be defined. There will not be submission of proposals on whom will be the main coordinator, but we have some alternate coordinators, Amy Sanders from the USA, and someone for Canada that will be receiving the information very soon. The second sub-working group is related with radio location, maritime, and aeronautical radio communications, and those agenda items. The main coordinator here is Michael Rassi from Canada and Jesus Romero from Mexico. The third sub-working group will be studying all the things related with science services. Again, the main coordinator has not been defined, but we have some alternate coordinators. The SGT4 or Subworking Group 4 will be related with the satellite service. I estimate that there will be a lot of work here because, as you know, there are many agenda items related with the satellite service. And the coordinator for this one will be Afonso Rocha from Brazil. And the SGT5, it's the one related with the general regulatory aspects and the future agenda agenda items, sorry. And as you can see, the coordinator is Carol Sosa from Colombia.
Okay.
What the intention of the chairmanship of this working group, or the coordinator of this working group that will be dealing with the future agenda items, is to give that coordination to the next to the country that will be the next chairman. So he or she knows what happened during the discussions of such agenda items. That is the logic. And very briefly, what are the WRC preparations? Many of you know that, or many of you have these national preparations, those committees, or the way that you define that it's better to take decisions. Then you submit it to the regional organization that in this case is CITEL, to the Permanent Consultative Committee 2. And we have our working group on preparation of WRC that I have just mentioned, that is chaired by Mexico. On the sub-working groups, you have the discussion of the proposals, and then you have levels of approval. First, the plenary of the working group, and second, the plenary of the PCC2. And you can build positions when you have approval of both bodies. We have rapporteurs that are the ones that actually elaborate those documents. We receive the proposals from the administrations, but the ones that are in charge of that specific document on that agenda item is the rapporteur. And everything is published on our collaborative space, so everyone can have access to that. The CPM, as all of you know, is the conference preparatory meeting. There are two meetings. One is the day after the WRC finish, not on Saturday, because usually the WRC finishes on Friday, but the next working day, so usually on Monday, and it defines the study groups, how those agenda items that have been approved for the next conference will be allocated in the specific groups, and what will be the structure of such study groups. And 8 months before the WRC begins, the second conference preparatory meetings is held, and it proposes the authorities of the WRC and the possible solutions of the agenda items that have been discussed. And the administration discuss on that and have a better idea or approach that what the regional organizations are going to propose. The Radio Communications Assembly, it's usually 1 week before the WRC begins, and it defines the WRC structure, program, and authorities, and the WRC itself that usually has 7 committees. 4 of them are administrative, 3 of them discuss the topics or are divided among the topics and have also different levels of approval: working groups, committee, and conference plenary. And then you have the final act, that it's the regulatory framework of the radio communications globally. Here, this is the PCC2 2020 work plan that has been modified because, as you know, we have these extraordinary circumstances. So we have planned to celebrate the 35th meeting of the PCC2 in Trinidad and Tobago from May 11th to the 15th. But for these extraordinary circumstances that I have just mentioned and that we are living, we decided to hold the meeting virtually. But we are looking forward to have the first meeting of 2021 in Trinidad and Tobago if the circumstances allow it. So what is the idea to have at least 2 meetings among the year? And the idea is because, as you know, the ITUR working groups are meeting. So many administrations in the Americas cannot participate in such meetings, or they are following many agenda items that they should be living in Geneva because they need to cover all of the agenda items. So the idea is to have these PC2 meetings and react on what is happening and propose possible solutions and make the voice of the CITEL countries being heard in such meetings. So that is the idea, to have two meetings. And I am glad to say that under these extraordinary circumstances, CITEL was the first regional organization that met virtually and successfully, because we were able to approve the study structure for this study cycle. So it will be very interesting what is going to happen for our next meeting, that is scheduled from November the 30th to December the 4th. You can see that it's to be defined, because not the dates are fixed, but the point is that the chair, that is Mexico, is looking if the circumstances allow to have this meeting physically, or if we are going to celebrate it virtually. So that will be defined at the end of August, and we will be informed you accordingly. And how did you build this common position? And it's in something that we call Inter-American Proposals, or IAPs. How did you build an Inter-American proposal? You need to start with a preliminary proposal that is a PP, that is a proposal that one of the CITEL member states presents to the PCC2 and has not been supported by any member state. So it's a proposal from one single member state. The draft Inter-American proposal, or DIAP, is a preliminary proposal that has the support at least of one other member state. And an Inter-American proposal is DIAP supported by at least 6 member states and is not opposed by more than 50% of the number supported obtained. So if we have an IAP with 12 support, we don't have 6. We don't have 6 countries opposing, then we have an IAP. If we have 7, then this IAP cannot survive. And those concepts are in the resolution 121 of CITEL. And finally, I would like to add that this is a very good opportunity for me as CITEL speaker here, to invite all the CTU member states to come to the CITEL meetings and participate. They usually do at the end of the cycle, but it's, as I said at the beginning of my intervention, it's a good opportunity for you to start with the beginning of the study cycle, so you can be more involved. And also, as you saw, there are many coordinations to be defined, so you can be one of our coordinators or our reporters, and that will be a good thing, to be more represented by the by the Caribbean countries and CITEL. So this is my last point. Also, if you are interested in hosting some of the upcoming meetings in 2021, 2022, or 2023, please feel free to contact me, and we can work on it. There is my information here, and thank you again to the CTU and the ITU for the invitation. Back to you.
Thank you very
Joaquin.
much, Miguel, for this introduction about the regional perspective. Now I want to give the floor to Kirsu Kran from CITT on behalf of Caribbean Telecommunication Union. Kir, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I would like to add to my introduction from Joaquin that I also served in the WRC 2019 cycle as the chairman for the Caribbean Telecommunications Union Spectrum Management Task Force. And one of the key things that was done by the task force during that cycle was to coordinate the work within the Caribbean countries that are members of CTU towards preparations for WRC 19, as well as participation at both the CITEL conferences, as well as the final WRC 19 conference itself. So if you'd allow me, I'm going to share my presentation, and hopefully everyone will see it in presentation mode. So yes, okay, thank you. So essentially what I'll be presenting on today is from a Caribbean perspective, as well as my administration, Trinidad and Tobago. So I'll be more or less wearing two hats for this presentation, both as the head of delegation from Trinidad and Tobago that attended the WRC and also participated at the CITEL preparatory meetings, as well as the chairman of the CTU Spectrum Management Task Force that coordinated a lot of the work within the Caribbean to make sure information was disseminated, shared, and views were obtained and collated towards discussions at both the CITEL level and thereafter at the WRC. So what I have for you today is more along the lines of speaking points. Looking firstly at the WRC decisions and how we view them. So like CITEL, for the Caribbean Telecommunication Union, and this union is really basically comprises the English-speaking Caribbean countries to the most part, but we do have participation from the French overseas countries from time to time, as well as other Caribbean countries within the space. And of course, for Trinidad and Tobago, we viewed the WRC decisions as favorable, particularly looking at more spectrum was identified by IMT, whilst protecting allocations for existing services were observed, such as satellite services, of course. What we were pleased to see, although we know it took a lot of effort by persons involved, both in the preparatory meetings at CITEL, as well as the WRC, was the agreement on protection limits to allow IMT operation in the 26 gigahertz band, whilst protecting the neighboring passive weather sensors. And we saw that very important for Caribbean countries because of our climatic conditions, particularly now as we speak, we have a tropical storm that's pretty much heading west, and its path is taking it very close to Trinidad and Tobago, and as well as some of the lower countries within the Caribbean archipelago. So I'm looking at Barbados, Grenada, St. Vincent, and we understand these passive weather sensors are very important, if not critical, to charting the predicted paths of these weather systems. So we're grateful for that in terms of what decision was arrived at the WRC with regards to the allowance for IMT at 26 gigahertz band and the protection of the neighboring passive weather sensors. we were also pleased to see that even though primarily for Region 2 allocations, that there's more spectrum allocated to high altitude platforms, as well as the addition of a new GMDSS satellite service provider in that space as well. When we looked at it from an overall perspective, looking at the positions that Trinidad and Tobago supported going into WRC, and by extension, positions that the CTU supported going into the WRC, and that fed into the CITEL preparatory work and the CITEL proposals that were submitted to the WRC 19. We estimated around 80% of the positions we supported led to decisions at the conference, if not in totality, but for the most part, because we understand that there were modifications made to some of these positions at the WRC 19. So that's more or less painting a perspective of the WRC 19 decisions. For Trinidad and Tobago, and dare I say for the Caribbean countries that are members of the CTU, key outcomes for us was really increased participation and contribution to the process. For the CTU, and I speak specifically for Trinidad and Tobago as well, our level of participation at the last conference had increased based on the 2015 WRC preparatory conference, as well as participation among other Caribbean countries had increased. Contributions to the process had also increased when we looked at the number of Caribbean countries that supported CITEL proposals that went to the WRC. We even had Bahamas that served as a vice chair for one of the agenda items in the CITEL structure. Right. For Trinidad and Tobago specifically, we held our first national consultations with our stakeholders, that's industry, academia, as well as government agencies, to share with them the work being undertaken at CITEL and ITU, what positions and discussions are being made, as well as getting their commentary, their recommendations to feed into the positions Trinidad and Tobago should take, firstly to CITEL and then thereafter to WRC. Coordination of information and discussion among CTU member states at the WRC was also a key outcome for us. We enhanced our ability to coordinate using technology, for example, and this is feeding off of what we saw as the approaches used by CITEL, where they engaged in a WhatsApp group to share information, to coordinate. We did similarly, and we created a WhatsApp group for CTU members, particularly those of the Spectrum Management Task Force, to increase that level of coordination, sharing of information, and even discussions. And this helped us well in terms of the preparatory work at CITEL, and even so more at the WRC 19 conference itself, based on the Caribbean countries that were able to participate at that conference. And of course, as always, the knowledge and experience gained was immense. I'd like at this point to say a special thank you to the CITEL Secretariat for their guidance, the information shared, for all the rapporteurs that were assigned to the agenda items, especially those who assisted in helping us understand and explain what we will call the heart of the issues, in order to help us make a more informed decision. So when we look towards 2023 World Radio Conference, what we anticipate is that Trinidad and Tobago and the CTU, although we focus late on the 2023 agenda items when they were being prepared and when they were being discussed at the World Radio Conference 2019, primarily due to resource availability. Although I am aware specific Caribbean countries did pay very close attention to what the proposed agenda for WRC 23 would have been. We do appreciate the review of the midband for IMT, as we believe this may yield more reliable IMT spectrum for use. Notwithstanding that, we recognize that there are existing users in the band and there will need to be a balance in terms of what will best suit for me, Trinidad and Tobago's use of that spectrum, as well as the use of the spectrum looking wider now at the in the Caribbean sphere through the CTU, and then of course to understand from a CITEL position what those views are. We also look forward to being more involved in discussions on satellite issues. One notable mention from the WRC 19, particularly for Trinidad and Tobago, was our involvement in the discussion of the NGSO bringing into use milestones. This was a great experience for us to understand these satellite issues. It's not very often you would have Caribbean countries participating in satellite issue discussions, primarily due to not just capacity in terms of human capacity, but also in terms of impact and importance of these satellite issues, as we understand them to be primarily regulatory issues as such. But it was good for us to be part of this discussion at WRC 19, and from a Trinidad and Tobago's perspective, as well as Caribbean perspective, we look forward in participating more in these satellite issues, recognizing that WRC 23 has a lot more of them than what we saw at WRC 19. However, and it's not something we can turn a blind eye to, but financial ability to participate will continue to be a challenge for the Caribbean CTU member states. Majority of us are developing countries, and the ability to participate physically at meetings has always been a challenge, and we expect that it will continue being a challenge, primarily based on the impact from this pandemic situation that we're facing now. However, we do hope to see the increased use of ICTs, particularly such for webinar forums such as this. So we do hope to see increased use of these ICTs maintained by the ITU, CITEL, as well as the CTU in the WRC preparations leading up to WRC 23. And in closing, increased CTU participation at WRC 23 preparations is expected, building on our existing process that we utilized for the preparatory work for WRC 19, as well as the lessons learned. One of the key lessons learned, and I'm thankful that Miguel spoke on it, is early participation in the process, as well as not just participation, but contribution and direct involvement. So I take the challenge presented by Miguel to see more Caribbean countries not just participate and contribute, but to be part of the CTU structure, be it vice chairs, chairs, or rapporteurs for these agenda items that we're going to discuss in this cycle. For Trinidad and Tobago, we plan to have more enhanced national consultations because it served us very well for WRC 2019. And as well, we're looking to start these national consultations earlier in the cycle, just to the benefit of receiving appropriate commentary and contributions from all stakeholders, as well as allowing us to contribute earlier into the discussions at CITEL and at the ITU thereafter. So that brings me to the end of my speaking points. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share not just Trinidad and Tobago's perspective, but also that on behalf of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilkir, for sharing with us the CTU perspective and roadmap. And now I'm going to give the floor to your colleague from the Central America, Alan Ruiz from Contelca. Alan, floor is yours.
Thank you, Joaquin, and thank you for this invitation. For us in Contelca, it's very important to be part of this event because we have an idea what other areas are doing on the spectrum issues. I would like to share my presentation. Yes.
Yes, we see, but please.
I would like to.
Now it's okay.
Congratulate. Thank you, Joaquin. I would like to congratulate you and your organizers of this event. We have a little bit over 150 participants right now, and this is a very good opportunity for all of us. Well, as you know, Comtelca, it's an international organization that gathers 8 countries so far, from Mexico to Panama and the Dominican Republic. So we are a little bit of part of the Caribbean as well. For the sake of time, I go a little bit faster. We have within Comtelca the Radio Communication Committee. You can see the composition here. We have all our state members and also some other members that are part of the Radio Communication Committee. I would like to stop here and thank CITEL for the guidelines that we have received from them about the organization for the WRC activities. Right now, we are still working on the WRC. We have our own plan, but basically, we just follow the CITEL's guidelines on this issue. And what we're trying to do from Comtelca is to have our internal discussions on all of the agenda items, and also try to encourage all the countries to be part of the CITEL discussions. And we try to be like a guidelines and to prepare some information that maybe some of the countries has no time to be updated with the CITEL activities. We remind them all the activities that we received, and we try to came up with our own trainings on spectrum issues, and also all trainings on other particular activities that we do around the spectrum. As I mentioned before, we have another institutions that work with us, and we have, for example, a CIET or GSMA. Even if Comtelca, Colombia is not part of Comtelca, we have also ANE from Colombia, and at this moment, the Radio Communication Committee is coordinated by the IFT from Mexico, and we are very thankful and lucky for that. First, I would like to highlight some of the challenges that we already have for the spectrum management before the WRCs. First of all is the digital divide. We have pretty much 50% of the population in Central America and all Comtelca countries with no connection, or at least not a meaningful connection. Some of the regulatory frameworks in Comtelca are dated from the last century, and that's a very good challenge. Some of the frequency allocation charts are not updated. This is a very difficult task, because some of the countries have to go through their Congress to approve the WRC final documents, and sometimes it takes a lot of time, and it's a little bit difficult for them to update those charts. There is a lack of frequency spectrum plans or digital agendas in our region. At this point, I would like to congratulate Colombia, because it has been a very good example and guide for us of what we're doing with the spectrum plans and use, and basically what they're planning for the use of their spectrum. Also, we are one of the regions that has a little less spectrum use for IMT, and that's a very interesting and challenge, and a good challenge to work with all the countries, because from the regional perspective, what we're trying to do is to harmonize the use of the spectrum. We're still working on the digital television transition, as we mentioned on the last Tuesday, that we have the privilege to participate in one of the events for this, one of the conference for this event. And obviously, we're still working on the digital dividend. Some of our countries are working already with this in the 700 band, but there's still some others that don't. And basically, one of the outcomes of the WRC is going to be, or is, the 600 megahertz that will be very, very interesting for our region. And last but not least, we are trying to help the countries and the members for capacity building. We're trying to, actually with the help with ITU and other organizations, and we also have CEABAT in our region. We're one of the focus on the capacity things is the spectrum, without a doubt. And one of the main purposes for us is to try to do that. And it's basically one of the outcomes, one of the challenges for the WRC outcomes. Basically, for what we seen and what we saw for the WRC 19, one of the main issues, the millimeter bands, we have to clear or share them. It depends upon the decision of each country. We have to harmonize their use, and within Comtelca, we're trying to help the organization to do that. In terms of these particular bands, it's interesting because there are bands that are not mostly used for the countries, but they still have to be updated on their charts, on the frequency allocation charts, and also try to see if there's some use on those bands. And some of the countries, they might be some, but this is a good band to work with for the future. I don't think that this is going to be for a short or long term, the use of these bands in our region, but we always recommend to the administrations to start to work on that, because there are going to be a lot of discussion soon on those bands. Also, the high altitude platform station, the hubs, I think it's a very interesting solution for our region, because it's going to be like less expensive and short term. I think it's going to be very interesting. Another thing that we are discussing in our sessions, and with the help of some of our members, is the Wi-Fi 6. So what is the advantages based upon on the activities that we are having in our own region already. So it's a very interesting discussion, and to see what the administration are going to do about this particular service and this particular band. And satellite services, I think that is going to be growing very fast in our region. We already have some satellites that are covering our countries. We need to close the digital gap, and satellite services offer us different solutions and cheaper than before. And so the administration are seriously considering the satellite services. But again, on this topic, we will need to update our frameworks, our charts, and especially for satellite services, there's a lack of regulation issues directly designed for these satellites, and some of the services, some of the regulation right now not exactly applied to satellite solutions. So we are struggling to see how can we make more flexible those regulations. And in order to close the digital gap, I think that we need to encourage the administration to analyze the disruptive applications, or the disruptive use, or the new use of the spectrum. We are working on the TV white spaces, and we are studying the dynamic spectrum access, the spectrum sharing techniques and trends around the world. the satellite services, as I mentioned, and we're still working on the 600 and 700 megahertz issues around our region. And I like to finish with this. I'd like to finish my presentation. Basically, we're basing all our activities and plans on the SDG 10 in order to reduce inequalities and within and among our countries. And this is basically our main theme on our internal agenda and plans within Comtelca. I would like to thank you for the attention, and I'm more than willing to get the questions that you might have. Thank you, Joaquin, and back to you.
Thank you, Alan, for your presentation of the Comtelca's positions and challenges, very illustrative. Now we are going to have the visions and opinion views of consideration from the main stakeholders. First, we have Hassem Mouakib from Intelsat on behalf of SOA, sharing with us the space industry perspective and views on this matter. Please, Hassem, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Joaquin. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with this esteemed panel, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all the attendees too. And I hope everybody's staying safe with these COVID days. Let me share with you my presentation that I will follow loosely. So just if you give me a quick second. Right. Okay. All right. So my name is Hassem Mouakib. I'm the Vice President of Spectrum Strategy at Intelsat, but today I'm speaking to you on behalf of ISOA. And for those of you who are not familiar with ISOA, it's a satellite organization for operators. Right now, it's based for the Europe, Middle East, Africa satellite operators. However, its presence is global. As you can imagine, satellite operators by definition are global, so therefore we're active in all regions. And so first, I would like to give you just my quick perspective on WRC. And as usual, WRC 19 was quite lively and dynamic conference. Perhaps the venue played a role in this atmosphere. This WRC, in our view, was interesting in the sense that, at least from our perspective, there was no one profoundly controversial agenda item that was polarizing. Obviously, there was always tension, but this time we feel it was more amicable in general. We also think that the satellite industry, as usual, was quite dynamic and positive. And then in that the many of the agenda items, if not all, that involved satellite communications, involved seeking more flexibility in using existing spectrum. So it was a lot less about seeking additional allocation, but about doing more with what we have, and I think that's quite interesting. So so there was many wins for the satellite industry during this WRC. So the list of agenda items, but as we were discussing. So first there was the approval of use of eSIMs, the mobile platforms in Ka-band for GSO networks. There was also an approved under agenda item 1.6 for NGSO satellites, the regulatory framework for them to operate in Q and V band. As mentioned earlier, there was also adoption of new rules for the non-geostationary systems bringing into use. There was also a little bit of additional allocation in the 51.4 to 52.4 under agenda item 9.1.9. And there was also some relaxation in the orbital arc parameters for Appendix 30 frequencies under agenda item 1.4. So those were positive wins for the industry. In terms of challenges that we saw for the under agenda item 1.13, we saw an identification of an additional 17 gigahertz of millimeter wave spectrum for IMT. And for that, you know, it's something we can discuss, but it would be, I think, useful for future conferences to have some kind of a scorecard on how this spectrum that was allocated in one conference, what progress was made toward using it by the second conference to see if there is a need for additional identification. There's also the agenda item 1.14 for identification of additional spectrum for HAPS. I mean, on one hand, HAPS is useful, but the concern for the satellite industry was that if it may infringe on satellite spectrum. There was also agenda item 9.1.7, which was primarily for region 2, but this was about unauthorized Earth stations. In terms of opportunities for the satellite operators going forward, so we have many agenda items for the future WRC that we're working on, and this highlights the point that I was mentioning about flexibility. So under agenda item 1.15, we're seeking flexibility in being able to use some of the planned satellite bands for aero connectivity. And for maritime, and this is an agenda item that may be of interest to the region. So currently the Appendix 30B bands are part of what's called the planned band, where every country has an orbital slot, and it's only the current regulatory framework only allows for using this band for fixed terminals on the ground. This would give administrations the flexibility to use them also in other ways, perhaps on airplanes or on maritime. There was also an agenda item for WRC 23 about eSIM operations in Ka band for non-geostationary satellites. We were seeking additional Ku and Ka band frequencies on agenda item 1.17. and also additional FSS downlinks in the 17.3, 17.7 gigahertz in region 2. So those are opportunities that we are working on for WRC 23. Challenges that we see is particularly for region 2 is agenda item 1.2, which is seeking additional IMT identifications in C-band in the 3.6 to 3.8, and this is quite critical because region 2 relies very heavily on C-band for satellites, and therefore the additional identification of 200 megahertz is quite impactful on the region, given that the lower part of the spectrum, 3.4 to 3.6, is available, and in some countries 3.3 to 3.6 is available. So there's 300 megahertz of mid-band spectrum available there. There is a similar agenda item in region 1, 1.3. We're not going to talk about it for so much. And then there is also agenda item 9.1.c. Again, this agenda item seeks to kind of to expand the use of fixed wireless access in satellite bands, which again, this would impact services that are currently being provided by the satellite industry. So really, in terms of okay, hold on. All right. So in terms of the road forward, the roadmap for going forward for the satellite industry, so it's very much reiterates what was said by prior speakers, which is we need to work with the administrations. We will be working with the regional groups, and we are trying to explain and provide information to administrations and also to stakeholders and to users, because I think what's different this time is that we really not to only engage the regulators, but we also need to engage the users and the beneficiaries of the spectrum to show the value of what can be done and how a certain agenda item would impact with the welfare and the well-being of individuals in every region. So so with that, I'm just going to close and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hassan, for this so illustrative presentation about the views of satellite industry. And now, last but not least, our dear colleague, Luciana Camargos, is going to share with us similar views from the mobile industry perspective. Luciana, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. Just confirming you can hear me and you can see the presentation.
Yes, please. Yes, on full screen. That's perfect.
Thank you. And again, this is the second time I speak on the seminar, but just wanted to thank again the ITU and also CTU for putting this together and for inviting the GSMA to speak. It's always a pleasure. Unfortunately, as I said yesterday, not in Trinidad and Tobago, which would have been nicer, but I hope everyone is well and healthy, and we'll see each other soon enough. So this is about WRC 19 and 23, what we see as results of WRC 23 and the new cycle, the challenges for results of 19 and the challenges for 23. For us, this is about 5G. It's about the evolution of 5G. And as I said yesterday, the WRC for us hold the key for the harmonization and for the success that has been the IMT worldwide. Most of you, lots of you attended WRC 19, so I just wanted to highlight a few numbers from our side. We had a substantial presence at WRC. We had a stand, we did lunchtime seminars, we invited each region a different day. I particularly like inviting CITEL on a Friday because it's my region and because I can, we have half an hour longer, so it's nice to have people a bit longer for our lunch and for and in this stand as well. But just some fun facts. We did serve 9,000 cups of coffee during WRC 19. We had a long queue in our stand and to get these coffee, and it was great to help keeping everyone awake because everyone knows that is badly needed during a WRC. There are also 50 kilos of chocolate, but as I don't eat chocolate, I can't help with that one. For us in the mobile industry, talking about seriously how the WRC 19 went, we saw our main agenda item was agenda item 113. It's millimeter waves, 5G, the spectrum that we saw all of you throughout last cycle saying this is really important for us, and we're very happy with the results of the WRC. So we did get global identifications for 26, 40, and 66 gigahertz. There are country footnotes for 50 gigahertz. 53 countries joined 45.5 to 47, and 105 countries joined 47.2 to 48.2. So we see as very positive result. We do like to see global identifications because that does help the ecosystem. It does help in the end affordability, which is important for everyone. But there are other things that were happening at WRC 19 that were very much interest to us. And I'll start with old footnotes that have, that other countries added their names to it. So the 600 megahertz footnote had new countries joining. The 33 to 34 megahertz footnote also had countries joining. 48, 499, again, lots of countries joined, and we do have a resulting agenda item. So for us, that sees the increase of the harmonization, which is really important for the industry. On the safeguarding side, bands we're worried about because we have identifications, because we have use. I would talk about issues 911 and 912, which has in one case broadcasting satellite service and the other one mobile satellite service. And also the 28 gigahertz band where there was an agenda item for Earth stations in motion, ESIMs, which was really interesting because the band is used for backhaul and it's also allocated to fixed and mobile. So it is something that worries us both in terms of backhaul and access. But we are happy with the results, and we think after a lot of discussion and a lot of flexibility and interaction between various industries, we're able to reach a good conclusion in that regard. So this is our family, our members that stayed there until the end. This was taken in the last day, so everyone just very tired, but I'm sure if we had taken on the first week, it would have been a lot more. But this is us towards the end of the WRC. For WRC 23, we're talking about 5G, but now we're talking about different needs in different parts of the spectrum. We have low band, we have mid band, and we have capacity bands being discussed. And for us, this is, although the discussions are happening in different regions, as you can see from the map, it also happens to catch up with different regions. So we see, for example, 470 to 960 is being discussed in region 1, because in WRC 15, it was only discussed in regions 2 and 3. Region 1 back then decided to delay the discussion until 23, and this is what they're doing now. So you see, it's a sort of a catch-up that happens after some WRCs. And for us, this is important because, again, it increases harmonization, which is key for the mobile industry. And talking a little bit about, in this case, the C-band, the 3.5 gigahertz, we see that in this place, for this particular band, the ITU is catching up with the evolution, is catching up with decisions that were made nationally, regionally, either by a group of countries or by a regional group, to use that band for IMT. And we see, for example, that you see the MENA countries there, on the darker blue, they have already decided they want to use 500 megahertz for IMT, but they only have 200 megahertz identified from WRC 15. Brazil came out of WRC 15 with 200 megahertz identified, changed that in WRC 19 for 300, and now they're looking to release 400. So in some cases, the ITU is ahead and leads what is going to happen in the next 10 years. In some cases, we catch up with the evolution that went is slightly different than how we thought or how the WRC managed to agree at some point. So for us, this is really interesting. It's also important for us because the channel size, especially for 5G, will impact a lot the number of cell sites. So to get the same throughput of a base station, if you are using 60 megahertz compared to 100 megahertz, you're going to need 64% more cell sites. If the mobile operators is implementing 64% more sites, it does mean that it's going to be a lot more expensive for them, which unfortunately translates in a more expensive service. Likewise, if it's going to be a cheaper way to implement, it's going to translate into cheaper services. That's just how the business would work in any business. And that's why we think that that agenda item is so important, is because when we talked about C-band and WRC 15, we were not talking about 5G, and then 5G happened, and 3.5 gigahertz is the birthplace of 5G. It's where all the 5G installations start, but 200 megahertz is simply not enough when we talk about 80 to 100 megahertz per operator to be able to provide the best use of the technology, and also for the economies of scale and densification of networks that I was just mentioning. But I think what is really important for us, and what is really interesting, is that we're in the beginning of the cycle. And in this week alone, I received 3 requests from the media asking what's the GSMA position for WRC 23 on the identification of a band. I can't have a position on the identification of a band because we haven't even started the studies yet. We are trying to gather characteristics. We're trying to gather spectrum needs. We're trying to gather the propagation models. With that, we'll be able to do the sharing studies and the CPM tags. And with that, we'll be able to assess if sharing is feasible, if sharing is not feasible, what are the conditions that will happen. So for us, it's really early to say a final position for the WRC 23, because we're very much in the beginning of the cycle. However, we do know that we find really, our members find that it's really interesting. The 3.5 gigahertz, a lot of interest from our members. 6 gigahertz, a lot of interest from our members. In fact, in that case, 90% of our operators said they see their future there. Because on one hand, while 3.5 gigahertz, we're catching up with the decisions that are already happening everywhere, 6 gigahertz is the future, is where we're looking at, is where we go next. So this is where we see the ITU leading and not the ITU catching up, as in the case of 3.5 gigahertz. So for us, that timeline tells a lot of what the discussions are going to happen, how the discussions are going to happen, and we're looking forward to engaging with administrations, with regional groups in the ITU. I mean, our participation in CITEL has been so strong in the last, well, my particular one in over 20 years. I was coordinator of one of the chapters, one of the groups last cycle, which was great. It was a role I really enjoyed doing, and I'm hoping to contribute even more in this cycle to the CITEL family. And also in CTU, which is a group I normally attend. Very much enjoy attending CTU meetings for the location, but also for the very good friends I've made over the years in CTU. So for us, that's it. That's what happens at WRC 23. We're looking for further harmonization of bands like 3.5 gigahertz, which is core for 5G, new harmonized spectrum for expansion, and that we see 6 gigahertz. But the cost efficiency I mentioned is definitely important and key for the mobile industry. We're talking about coverage as well. We see the 3.5 gigahertz and the 6 gigahertz for a city-wide capacity. We don't see them as rural bands. For rural bands, we're talking about agenda item 1.5, below 1 gigahertz, which doesn't apply to region 2 because region 2 already dealt with that. So that would be for region 1 only at that stage. Region 2 already has a footnote that is going to be and we already see the implementations in 600 megahertz and successfully in the US, and we expect other countries to follow as well. So that's it for me, Joaquin. I will stop sharing, and thank you very much again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Luciana, for your also very interesting presentation. And now we could go ahead with the section on question and answer. We don't have too many. Just one on the chat. Then please don't be ashamed. Be free to ask questions. It's for free. Meanwhile, I have just a very simple question. Well, two-part question. In your view, both for regional organization and mobile and satellite industry, what are within the agenda WRC 23 the more, let's say, complex agenda items where the consensus could be, are you foreseeing to be harder to achieve? And what could be the specific actions from the industry and also with the regulators to overcome these difficulties and going towards the desired consensus? So, if anyone like to answer first, be free. CITEL, Contelca, CTU, GSMA, ZOA, please be free.
Well, I can get started if the others are a bit shy, Joaquin. I think that, well, I did mention some of the agenda items for the case of the GSMA are important, but I was mentioning the ones that directly related to IMT bands. We do have a number of agenda items that to touch existing IMT bands, and I can give you a long list, which we're going to be following. I think this conference for us, this cycle is more complicated because we do have a lot of different agenda items placed lots of different agenda items that we are seeking more IMT bands. So 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, those all relate to IMT in the case of 1.3 mobile, which we didn't have before. So that is extremely complicated. But one message that I would like to leave is that I've said that before in CITEL and I've said that before in Comtelca and in CTU, is that in these difficult agenda items, no change is the easiest option. So just going to the WRC with no change, that is simple. That maintains the status quo. That makes everyone's job easier, but it doesn't solve the problem. So if you go to a conference with a no change position, the question you had before going to the conference is still pending because you didn't address what you were supposed to address. So I think we will have lots of interesting discussions in this cycle, and we need to be brave to discuss and to find common mid position and agreement between the various parties for a successful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. Hassan, would you like also to share your view, please?
Sure. So again, just to highlight a point about the agenda items. So for us, agenda items that have to do with mid-band spectrum, are very critical. particularly for Region 2, Agenda Item 1.2 for C-band. I mean, it's like we hear the assertions of the mobile industry time and again about that you need 80 to 100 megahertz of bandwidth to make 5G work. But we have also seen studies like study by Ofcom that clearly says that there's no basis for this 80 to 100 megahertz requirement. It has been there has been cases where 40 megahertz and it has been shown to be sufficient. So again, but this is an agenda item where we see this kind of every side tries to put on the maximum that they want to achieve, and then it's for us in the satellite industry it's deja vu really, because C-band the first agenda item on C-band was back in WRC 07, and it's going to be WRC 23, and we're still talking about C-band. So I think this is going to be a really critical agenda item, and it's really important for regulators and actually stakeholders to understand what the balance, what their strategic objectives are, and what works best for them. Now, the issue about harmonization, of course, harmonization is always very important, but harmonization cannot be forced. It cannot be done by that everybody must harmonize to this level. Harmonization is done to the extent that harmonization is possible, meaning we harmonize among regions that on things we all agree upon, but we can't force a region or a sub-region to get along or just join the group because that's what everybody else is doing. Every region is different. I mean, again, when you look at C-band, when you look at mid-band spectrum, the profile of usage is very different. When you look at what happens in Europe, and this is for everybody, when we look at what happens in Europe with C-band, their usage profile of C-band is very different from the Americas and very different from the Caribbean. So it doesn't make sense to harmonize with Europe when the realities of the regions and how they use certain bands are different. I mean, you look at the reliability of C-band in a rainy region that cannot be met by any other band. This is very important. It has to be looked at. The need for C-band in cases of emergencies, because this is the only band that can allow you to get through, is also very important. So we as regulators and and every participant, we need to balance all these issues when we make a decision, and not just kind of follow the hype of the day, so to speak. Thank you.
Now again, I think it's very interesting to see the views of the sub-regional organizations. So Kirs, I see you are eager to take the floor. Please, Kir. And after you, I would like invite Alan, not being ashamed and doing the same.
Thank you. Just a short contribution, really, to more into perspective and process. And this is really taken from how we approached the last WRC cycle, particularly Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean countries that embody CTU. And this was to look at the agenda items based on what we see as applicable importance to our sub-region, our community, recognizing the points raised by both Luciana and Hasim, in that balance and harmonization is what we are striving towards, although we may know that it may not be achievable to the ideal respect. And also to recognize the importance of certain services, not just the frequency ranges that those services use, but the services themselves. So with IMT, the importance of mobile broadband, and for the satellite community, the importance of satellite services when we're looking at disaster management, as well as connectivity to remote areas as well. Noting well that satellite broadband has advanced to the stage where you now have, satellite systems have advanced to the stage where you now have the opportunity to get satellite broadband services as well. So that will be an important point of understanding, as well as a process for us as we go through this new WRC 23 cycle. But it's not an easy task, as we know it from being involved in previous cycles. as well as understanding the issues of the agenda items selected for this cycle. But it's a task that we must engage objectively in, as well as recognize that although we seeking to achieve that ideal situation, we would need to understand how much compromise may be required if we are to satisfy the balance as well as the level of harmonization required for all these services that do provide great important ICT services for countries like Trinidad and Tobago as well as other Caribbean countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Keir. Alan, what is your vision of the main challenge for CONTELCA members, please?
Thank you, Joaquin. It's actually a very difficult question because within our group in CONTELCA, with the Radio Communication Committee, we understand and we discuss a lot of technical issues on each band, and we know the characteristic, the advantages, the different opinions from different sectors, and they are a little bit aware of what's going on everywhere. But when you think about what the countries are actually using, some of them are still struggling with AWS 700 and some other low frequencies. Some countries has only like a little bit over 200 megahertz of a spectrum use for IMT. So when we try to convince the authorities to come up with positions in higher bands, it's a very difficult to call their attention because, you know, we are like a little bit behind on what the rest of the world is doing. And yes, I agree with Luciana that going with no change is probably not the best option, but sometimes there are no like a political willingness to provide something different, or there are some political interest in some of the areas of some of the frequencies that are already used by some other sectors that might not be happy with some change of at least some activities from the authorities otherwise. So I think we're going in a good track. We are trying to analyze and understand everything, but we have like a little barrier from a political perspective. Again, the technical team is completely aware of what we're doing and what the WRC is about, but it's a little bit difficult to move. And I think that will be one of the big challenge, and also try to put together and try to use the right spectrum for each country as again a little bit difficult, and the process in putting into a spectrum available for the operators, it's also a hard thing to do, and the political changes, the governments, the different view, the lack of digital agendas and planning from spectrum is also something that we are struggling with.
So and just on that point on no change, I mean, of course, it's if no change comes about through refusing and from the very beginning to engage in the discussion, it's one thing. But if no change is reached through deliberations and through arguments and through studies, then so be it. Sometimes no change is what people at the end decide to go with. But I mean, it's not always a bad thing. If it's done in terms of rejecting outright moving forward, then I agree. Then it's not a positive way. But if through studies and analysis things are demonstrated that certain services are compatible or incompatible, then maybe in some cases that is the right outcome. So we should not paint any outcome as this is more favorable, that if we come out with no change it's less favorable than change, because it has to do with what the region needs and what the administrations need and what the stakeholders need. So
Thank you, Hassan. I see, and sorry for missing, that our colleague from CITEL wishes to take the floor, also to share their view, CITEL's view. So Miguel, please.
Yeah, thank you, Joaquin. I believe that my predecessors have framed what are the topics that will be the most complicated in this study cycle discussions. But one thing that I would like to share, and what I am very happy about it, is that CITEL works like a family, and they are very respectful and very friendly when they are discussing, because we understand that our region has many countries that with different circumstances. There are many developing countries and there are some developed countries. So they are always open to hear the solutions or the view of the others. And this is what has made that CITEL can accomplish that, to submit many IAPs to the WRC and succeed on that position. So all the items will be complicated. Even sometimes the footnotes are complicated among the countries. But the thing here is to be open and to listen to each other and try to understand and be empathic with the others. So one thing that I also anticipate is what is going to happen with this post-COVID-19 situation, because the main of the negotiations used to be face-to-face, and when you can talk on the corridors with the others. But with this situation that we need the social distance and perhaps these virtual meetings, it will be challenging. So I hope that this friendly ecosystem in CITEL doesn't change with that kind of things.
Thank you, Miguel. We don't see a lot of questions on the chat. We have only two, and they are specific.
I do have one comment, Joaquin, if that's
yes, go ahead, Luciana, please.
Thank you very much. Just commenting on what Hazem was just saying. Well, first, I just wanted to agree with Miguel. We are a big family in CITEL, and very proudly so. I think I do attend lots of the regional groups, and CITEL has a different way of working, which I find very good, very pleasing to be part of the CITEL family. But just commenting on what Hazem just said about the no change situation, and I think it really depends. The discussion is not so simple as are those two systems compatible or not. I mean, using an example from WRC 19, the ESIM agenda item was not compatible with fixed services and mobile services on the ground. The CPM text said there will be interference if there is a system, if there is an ESIM station, an ESIM station on the ground with a fixed service or a mobile service, a terrestrial station on the ground. There will be interference. And the conference decided to go ahead and identify or allow the band for use for ESIMs for a number of reasons, because there is a demand, because the countries are interested in doing that, because the technology has evolved. And then you identify a number of regulatory conditions and a number of technical conditions for that to be possible, even knowing that if they're going to be using on the same frequency, on the same geographical location, sharing is not feasible. So the discussion is much more complicated than just the results of the sharing studies. Did I want to be going into WRC 23 to discuss C-band? Honestly, no. It's the third time we are going there. We went in WRC 07, we went in WRC 15, and we're going again. The reason why we are going again is because the technology is evolving, and there is a need, and there is an intent from administrations to use that band for IMT, and that's why we keep discussing. Maybe if in 2015 we had looked more to the future than we did, we wouldn't be needing to come back at WRC 23. Maybe WRC 23 will say no, we don't know. But the conversation is very complicated. It's not as simple as simple results of sharing studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. I ask the indulgence of the panelists to go ahead with the other question. We have received a very interesting question to all the panel from the ANE, Colombia. What are the plans and challenges for WRC 23 over the 450, 470 megahertz frequency band? In Americas, this band has many applications such as UMTS, Network for Social Projects, or conventional narrowband networks. So, who wishes to answer first this matter? 450, 470 megahertz?
I don't think that band is in the agenda of the WRC unless I misunderstood the agenda very badly. There is an agenda item for 470 to 960 in region 1, but 450, 470, I haven't found this agenda item.
We talk about 450 megahertz and 470. So if I remember, it where they were used to use to be used the CDMA 450 megahertz.
So that band was identified in WRC 07 for IMT globally. It is a band that has limited interest because it's only 20 megahertz. And for the technology at the time, we were talking about 5 megahertz channel, 7 megahertz channel. And that band is part of recommendation ITUR M1036. It has been part of 1036 for many years. And it is used in various countries. CITEL does have a recommendation for that band to be released for IMT. I understand some countries have, so Brazil has license for that, for IMT in that band. Other countries have licensed other services. There's some interest for PPDR, for example, in that band. There is all sorts of interests, but there is a limitation of 20 megahertz, which for LTE is quite limiting. And I guess for 5G, even more limiting.
Thank you, Luciana. I'd like to know the sub-regional position of CTU and Contelca regarding this band.
Thank you, Joaquin. We have discussed this ban in the past, and this is I think it's a good opportunity if we would like to have a regional ban that could serve all our countries. You know, it's a very low band with high coverage, but I think that there's some technical issues and some different assignments on each country have prevented us to pursue with the discussions on this band. So at this very moment, still on discussion, but as Luciana mentioned, there's a few of interest on the use of.
Thank you, Alan. Kirk, what is the view of CTU for this particular band?
Thank you, Joaquin. Really and truly looking at the 450 to 470 megahertz range has not been a broad topic of discussion at the CTU level. Our focus was more the first digital dividend. This is the 700 megahertz band. What I can say is that in terms of use of this spectrum, currently it's more for narrowband services, so conventional land mobile services. So there isn't any plans for this cycle, and consistent with what Luciano is indicating, for discussion of this range. However, I do note Alan's comment that if it is, we can assess it from a CITEL perspective for the region, and if there's value there, then it may be a worthy discussion, not necessarily within the WRC 23 preparatory cycle, but as a CITEL discussion for a regional position.
Thank you, Kier. We are over the time, then I guess we need to conclude the panel. Before doing that, I just like to share a message. Let me share the screen. That's for all the participants. As we had discussed during this day, please, it's very important that you have in mind that the WRC is a cycle. It's not a single event. It's a 4-year cycle. as we made the comparison last week, is like the Olympic game of the spectrum. And that's a good comparison because an athlete is not going to the Olympic every 4 years. He needs to train during the 4 years and having plenty of competition. That here is similar. He's not going to Geneva or Egypt or other beautiful country to meet during 4 weeks and because you will be lost. Is working very hard with many people, with many other entities and administration, searching for this consensus. In this case, remember we had the CP1, now we are working on the I2R study group. Then it's also important to participate in an I2R group where they are developing the necessary studies about the compatibility to have the recommendation for the different agenda items. It's important and it's essential, the role of the regional organization, and we have mentioned last week, is less complicated if we could harmonize 6 regional positions that 193 countries wants. And in that point is, we take also again the occasion to thank CITEL for the excellent job helping us to create this consensus at regional level. And of course, as saying before, this consensus is bottom up, then it's first necessary having the consensus at the near level sub-region, then CTU and Contelca contributed to it, and going forward. Then please have in mind, we need to work together during 4 years, looking for the desirable consensus on the agenda WRC 23.
So Joaquin,
yes.
if I just make a quick comment. So I think
yes.
that perhaps there is a silver lining in COVID is that we are relying more on virtual meetings. So, and as you know, participation in ITU meetings has been, is often limited to certain administrations that actively participate, and others who may have resource issues do not participate, and they only show up at WRC. And so perhaps now with the infrastructure that we're putting in virtual meetings, now it would allow more and more administrations to participate in the process, even though it's bumpy and it's difficult from what I hear from folks who are attending Working Party 5A. But nonetheless, I think to see participations from different stakeholders, I think it's a positive thing.
I absolutely agree. Thanks for your comment. And effectively, one of the few benefits of this outbreak is precisely that all entities were forced to enable the virtual working, virtual networking, virtual meetings, and definitely this virtual format arrived to stay. Then we should, on the future, we are going to mix presential and virtual meetings, helping the small countries having a lot of problem with human resources and also financial of this participation. And one of the advantages of Americas is that we have less local time difference compared to other regions, that it could easier the organization of this at the same time presential and remote meeting on the future. And it will help, I wish, for CITEL having more and more countries participating on the discussions. Saying that, we need to conclude, and I like to give the floor to Nigel. Before that, saying thank you a lot to all the speakers for your excellent presentations, and wishing meeting you very soon. Nigel, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. Thanks to you and all your panelists, Miguel, Kirk, Alan, Hazim, and Luciana, for a very good session this morning. So we are now at the end of the 10th of our 10 sessions in this Regional Radio Communication Seminar for the Americas 2020. And it's been historic in the sense that it's been our first online forum. It's the ITU program hosted by the CTU, and to wind up our entire event, I want to invite the 2 main hosting organizations to say a few words at the end. So I'll first invite my own Secretary General, Ms. Bernadette Lewis, to address us as we closed. SG?
Yes, I think someone has to just my video, turn on my video because I can't seem to do it.
You're not able to on
right,
at present?
yes. So thank you very much. And as Nigel said, we've come to the end of this Regional Radio Communications Seminar 2020 for the Americas, and specifically today, the forum entitled WRC 19, Outcomes, Challenges, and Opportunities for the Region. COVID-19 had forced us to approach the convening of this RRS in the context of the new environment, and hence we had to move to a 2-week virtual event. But we saw the benefits of a virtual meeting in that we had a wider audience. We also realized the benefits of very close collaboration between the Caribbean Telecommunications Union and the International Telecommunications Union for a very productive and a very technically produced virtual seminar, which delivered a lot of insight and understanding, a wealth of information designed to build capacity and help prepare all of us for the future, which will require universal connectivity and also fostering digital transformation. So on behalf of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, I would like to thank all of the presenters. I think they did an excellent job. I certainly learned very much from the whole 2 weeks of activities. I think the content was rich, the discussion very good. I cannot, say more than thank you to the presenters, and of course to all of the participants who joined us since the 13th of July and stayed the course with us, actively participating and contributing to the discourse. I really, really appreciate the fact the numbers were consistently, not that I'm a numbers person, but I think the fact that we had sustained participation speaks to the effectiveness of the meetings. And I'd also like to thank the CTU team and the ITU staff who worked behind the scenes, the engineers of the virtual forum who kept us on track. There's a special thank you for us. As Nigel mentioned, this is historic for the CTU and also, I believe, for the ITU in doing such an event, a regional seminar. But I think it was a great success. And I'd like to thank all the people who contributed to this, to facilitating the execution of what I would say is a very successful seminar and forum. And I thank you all for your participation, your attention, and I'd like to just express my best wishes that we all continue to be safe, and may God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
SG, for those supportive words. We now would like to hear from the ITU, and I believe Mr. Cleveland Thomas, the area representative for the ITU, would say a few words. Cleveland, you take the floor, please.
Good morning to you, Nigel. Are you hearing me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, good morning to you and to all of our colleagues who are listening, tuning into this event, and who have been with us for the past week.
We're not seeing you though. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know if you could see me because no, I'm having trouble here with the video. Right. So my apologies for that. Yes, so so for the, as we just heard from the Secretary General of the CTU, Bernadette Lewis. This is the first virtual event for us concerning a series, and we had a series of sessions over the past 2 weeks. This regional radio communications seminar for 2020 for the Americas has been, as we all know, quite successful in many respects. We have broken records in many areas. We had more than 370 participants from over 40 countries, including 29 out of 35 from the Americas. We had loads of questions during the sessions, at times over 200 questions and answer sessions. We had more than 20 ITU staff supporting both presentations and the question and answer session we have had, and over 30 panelists from more than 20 radio communication stakeholders. This year, we had a large participation of women helping us to achieve our commitment as far as gender parity is concerned. And I was reminded that we had a first time a panel with solely ladies, women speakers on the topic of IMT and broadband technology. So it's a first, it's an important one that we should note. And it is also a milestone for future online seminars. Over the past couple of weeks, we spoke on issues as far as terrestrial services are concerned, satellite, emergency comm. As you know, we within the region are now looking at and trying to deal with Hurricane Gonzalo at the moment, on its way heading towards certain Caribbean countries. We prayed that we would not have the kind of devastation we have had as in the days of those with the Bahamas and others. We have had conversations surrounding so many areas, including just a few minutes ago of WRC 19 outcomes and preparation for WRC 23. So it has been historic. As we heard from the Secretary General, it's very fruitful, loads of information. And what I find even extremely beneficial is that the Caribbean participation has been relatively high when compared to other events. So again, this virtual event, we know it's not going to be the first as we go forward. So as we come to this close, on behalf of the Director of the Radio Bureau, Mario, the Director of the BDT, Doreen, and also the Director of the Americas region, Bruno Ramos, we want to thank every one of you. We want to specifically recognize the CTU for continuing to collaborate with us here at the ITU. Our relationship is rich, extremely rich, and we know we will continue to work together. Nigel, to you, you have done a superb job. And we thank you for that. I know that your boss is listening, and I suspect that as normal, you will get a gift of the iPhone 10 or 11 for the work that you have done. And I don't want to forget our colleague, Joaquin. This event essentially is Joaquin's baby. He has worked with you tirelessly in making sure it has been a success to bring all these speakers and to ensure that we have participants as many as we have had. I have seen a sterling work and dedication to make it a success. So Joaquin, thank you. Thank you for representing the ITU and for the excellent job that you have done. Our deepest gratitude to all the participants, all the panelists, all those who were involved behind the scene and up front. thank you very much. We know that we're in a different time, a new normal, but keep safe, everyone. Enjoy your weekend with your family, and you know, God bless you. So have a wonderful one. Thank you so much.
Hi, Cleveland, many thanks for your words towards me, but I want to share that with CTU and particular Nigel. This is the result of teamwork. We worked very, very hard with him during many weeks preparing it. Please extend that to the CTU team. And in my side, I like to extend that to my colleague from the terrestrial and space department, led by Jorge Sicorosi and Ben Ba. This definitively is work of all this team. But at the end, the success of this event is basically the participation both of panelists and participants. You are really the success of this event. I wish that you have found out very useful and the outcomes and the learning be very positive, and the great opportunity for the future activities on the spectrum management on benefit of the region and at the end of the benefit of our people, because we cannot forget, we are just a tool. A spectrum and radio communication is not at the end the goal. It's a tool to improve the life of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those words, Joaquin, and to Cleveland and the SG as well for the kind words. I think we at the CTU certainly are all about collaboration for the common good, and I think ITU is of the same mindset. So we always have no problems working together. It's always wonderful when it works out well, as this one seems to have done. So as we close now, I think I'll just leave you with one reminder, and it comes from the benefits of having participated online. An earlier speaker has already mentioned that we probably had some additional participation from the Caribbean that might have been difficult if we had to travel somewhere. But also, the event webpage remains. And on the event webpage, we are able to put recordings of the seminar and the materials available for download. So even if you need to be reminded of something, that is still a resource for you, and even others who might not basically have been able to attend, it would still be available. I'm not sure, Joaquin, if you wanted to add something.
Yes, just a final announcement. Earlier this week, you are going to receive an email with a survey. Please fulfill that, take our time, and it will be no more than 5 minutes, because your feedback, your opinion, your views will be essential for us to keep improving. Please help us to going better and better. Your views, your opinion are very, very important. So please, again, help us with this survey. It will be collected in a totally anonymous way. So be absolutely free to be totally sincere about what you think was the good, the bad, the ugly, things to improve, etc., etc. Thank you.
Yes, and thanks for that intervention. It's also especially important because this is the first time we are doing an online RRS. So you have an opportunity to help us improve as we go forward. We are in a situation where we are adapting to a pandemic, and let's see how we can push forward with the use of ICT for the general benefit. Joaquin noted that it is a tool to an end, so we want to use ICT most effectively for all our development and to meet all our goals. So with that, I would like to wind up. I'd ask you all, well, thank all the participants. Joaquin mentioned how many were registered. It's something like 370 or something of the sort. They would not have all been on at the same time, but for all of you who can hear me right now, and maybe anyone else who might see a recording, thank you all for tuning in, participating, contributing, as the case might be. And I wish you all Godspeed. I hope we all stay safe in terms of the pandemic, and stay safe as well, my colleagues in the Caribbean right now in the sites of Hurricane Gonzalo. So with that, I sign off from Port of Spain, our regional radio communication seminar of the Americas 2020. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.